Okay, so today we are going to see flat file as sources. Okay, so till now we have seen relational table as a source. Till now, till now we have seen relational table as a source. That means Oracle table as source. Now, if at all we wanted to read the data from a file system, okay, sometimes in real time we'll be getting the data from files also. When we get the data from files, so how are we going to read the data? Let's say let me create a 1.txt file. Okay, so this file is having structure called name, number, address. So with this we have a file. So these are the columns. Let's say name is Bhaskar, number is 10, address is BLR, name is 20 HYD. So we'll be getting the data like this in real time. Okay, so we will call it as a flat file data. Okay, that is .csv file or .txt file data that we will say. Okay, now when we have the data in a file, so these are the columns and these are the records. So now when we wanted to load the data into a table, how are we going to do that? How do we read the data from a file and load the data into a table? Now I'm just saving it. Where I'm saving is go to this PC where Informatica is installed. Okay. One second. We can keep anywhere actually. So I'm just creating in the C service Informatica. Inside that, I'm just creating source files. In this directory, I'm just saving it. This I am creating. I'm saving it as employee.txt. Okay, select all files, employee.txt file I have generated. I'm just saving it. Let us assume that we have the data in this file. Okay, now close it. Now in the administrator, we have to create a new connection for flat files. SLK 18, that is the project name underscore flat file. Flat file it's ff underscore. Okay. So respect to directory location name that we have to give. So flat file sources. In the top type, you have to select the file type as flat file. Runtime environment, select the runtime environment. Directory, we have two options. Either we can, if you know the directory name directly, we can keep it. If required, we can browse it. So usually in real time, so either ways we can do. What is happening here? The file, because none of the agents and templates are running because the agent service for Windows is not running. Okay, so there are two things here. One thing is when the runtime environment, whatever we select here, so this runtime environment should be configurable to select from the Windows. So since it is not configured, in real time we'll be having Like if at all we wanted to use any Windows directory, we'll be having a separate runtime environment. And if you wanted to access Unix environment, we'll be having a separate runtime environments. Okay, so what this article is telling is, okay, so directly it is asking, they are telling to the populate the flat file directory path in the connection text box by copy paste from the Windows Explorer. So from here, just go to Windows Explorer. So where our folder is there? It is there in C drive, right? C drive, Informatica, source files. So this directory, just copy paste it. Okay, now code page UTF-8. So usually select the code page as UTF-8. Now click on the test connection. Test connection is successful. Okay, so in order to browse it, so we have to follow these steps. We have to follow these steps. What I'm going to do, this knowledge article, I'm going to give it in the WhatsApp chat. Okay, in the WhatsApp app, I'm going to give you that. Now I've created a flat file connection. Now save it. So first we have to create the flat file connection. We have to give the directory name only. We don't need to give any other directories. We just need to give only the directory name. Now go to data integration. I'm just creating a new mapping for it. Now click on source, connection, select flat files. So directory we have already mentioned. So in that directory, what all the files are available, so that files we'll be able to see it here. Click OK. Now go to fields. So these fields are directly coming because in the file we have the header. If we have the header, it will automatically take the column names from the header. It will automatically take the column names from header. But the precision, if you see, right, it will be by default, it will be coming as 255. Now we can edit that. Okay, options, edit metadata. Now we can change the data types. Native data type is currently it is string. Now we can make it number. Number, let's say number 10. Because these data types we will have to change according to the target structure. In the target table, whatever the data type and precisions are there, accordingly we will have to change. This is the mandatory field, mandatory activity that we will have to perform when we are using flat file as sources, because by default for all the columns it will be coming as n string 255 only. Okay, now we will have to change these data types to and data types and precisions to the respective data types and precisions which are there in the target table, because this column is being connected to the which target table. So in that target table, whatever the data types is there, accordingly we will have to select them. So how are we going to change the data type? Click on options, click on edit metadata. Now go to source. Now we selected the object, right? We have a formatting options here. So in the formatting options, so there is a pop-up open. So here we need to see. So always the files are of two types: delimited files or fixed bit files. So delimited files meaning, so how the values for different columns are being segregated. If it is a delimited file, so there will be a delimiter. Now here in this file, it is a comma is a delimiter, which is going to tell that from first position to first comma is for first column. So from first comma to second comma is for second column. So from second comma to till end is for the last column, third column. So like that. So for which value is for first column, which value is for second column, and which value is for third column. So we need to give an instruction to the integration service that populate these values for this column, this values for this column, this values for the other column. Okay, so that we will call it as delimited file. So what is the separator between the column values is called delimiter. If it is a delimited file, so then we will have to select what is the delimiter. So which delimiter is being separated, is being used to separate the values. Okay, here it is a comma delimiter, so we can select comma here, or we can select any other. Sometimes, if at all, sometimes we can see pipe delimiter. So if it is a pipe delimiter, then we will have to select other, and we'll have to give the particular delimiter value. Okay, so the selection of delimiter is very, very important. We just need to open the file, and what is the delimiter is being used in the file. So we will have to select the right delimiter. Then only it will load the data properly. Okay. Now there is one more property called treat consecutive delimiters as one. So sometimes what is going to happen? So by mistake, one more comma will be added. Comma will be added. Okay. So in this case, we have to consider that as a single delimiter or two separate delimiters. See, ideally, what is going to happen? So then this is for first position to first comma is for first column, and first comma to second comma is for second column. From second comma to third comma is for third column. So like that, it is going to consider. But here the commas are added by mistake. That we know, but how Informatica will know to consider that as a single delimiter or multiple delimiters. So if you enable this option, treat consecutive delimiters as one, then if at all there are any two commas, two delimiters, then it will consider a single delimiter only. Then row delimiter we can ignore, and text qualifier. Now the data from the file can come in a double quote, can come in a single quote, and without quotes also we can get it. For example, if the data, we have to open the file and we have to see if the file data is in the quotes. File data is in the double quotes. So we will have to select double quote. So text qualifier, if you don't have anything, then we will have to select none. So according to the file data, we will have to take a decision. Okay, field labels. Field labels, by default, it is going to come import from row. Which row we have to select? One. Okay, so field labels. If at all we have a header, file is already having a header, then we can use this property. If not, we can auto generate, or when we auto generate, it is going to come as field 1, field 2, field 3, field 4, like that. Okay, so usually like files will be having headers. Files will be having, first row will be having headers. We can use this property, import from first row, first data row. So file is already having a header, so header is not a data row. Then from the second row is the actual data. First data row is 2. That means we are skipping the header and we are selecting actual data from second row. Any question here in these formatting options?
Only one doubt, Bhaskar. So sometimes, if you remember in IHSM, so we are removing. Okay. Sorry. Sometimes we will remove the headers and we will load the data, right?
Huh.
In Power Center, if you see, we'll remove the headers. We'll make a timestamp file to without timestamp file, and we'll remove the headers. Then it will start load. In this case, sorry. So we have to consider as a first data row as one, right?
In that case, we have to consider yes, first data row is 1, because we will not be having any header in the file. So from first row itself, it is a data file.
Okay. Bhaskar.
Okay, so these are all, and the text qualifier. See, majorly whenever we are going to deal with the flat file, first thing, what is the deal? It's whether it's a delimited or a fixed width file. So delimited is meaning. So then what is the delimiter? What is the text qualifier? And import row, header, field labels, and from which row we have to select the data. All these properties are going to play major role. Okay, so we have to carefully see each and every property here. Then click OK to the target. So instead of loading that target into instead of loading that as a table, what I'll do, I'll just load as a file only. Okay, otherwise we can do. So what I'm going to do, I'm just creating a folder. So read the data from a file and load the data from a file. What I'm going to do, I'll just create one more connection for target files.
It means it is file to file loading, right, Bhaskar?
It is file to file loading. So either way, the connections, it is up to us. So all we need to know is, do we know how do we read the data from a file? Do we know how do we load the data into a file? Okay, file to table we can load, table to file we can load. That's up to us. Okay, so all we need to know is, what is, if you wanted to read the data from a file, what is the source connection? If you wanted to load the data into a file, what's the target file connection? We need to know those. So now in this case, instead of taking 4 examples, I'm just taking 2 examples. So in first example, source is a flat file. In the second example, target I'm generating as a file. Okay, when we are generating any object, so in the target file directory, it will look for a file here. It will look for a file here. If you don't have any file here, we can select create at runtime. If you don't know the file, okay, we can create at the runtime. We can say apply target file.txt. And here also we'll be having formatting options. Now, with which delimiter we have to generate the file. Let's say I wanted to generate with pipes. I wanted to generate as a pipe. Now text qualifier. I don't want to load with the double quote. I'll just put none. Okay. So formatting options for target is simple. Then click OK. And in the advanced, so we have certain options here in the advanced. Okay. So if we don't have target directory, then we can create a target directory and we can load it, because this property is only when once the files are getting processed. Sometimes there will be some Unix scripts which are going to drop the directories every time. In this case, if you wanted to generate the directory every time, we can select this option, append if exist. Okay, for every execution, whenever we are doing, every time the files will be overwritten. Okay, files will be overwritten. Now we don't want to overwrite the existing file. We wanted to append to the existing file. Then we can select this property. And header options. So we can select these options. Output field names. So with the whatever the output fields which are coming from source, with that files will be header will be created. The target fields will not be there. Field names will not be there. Okay, because the file will be generated with the same names. Whatever is coming, because we are creating a new file here at the runtime. So we are mentioning that we are creating at a runtime. So whatever is coming from source with the same header, the files will be generated. That's why no field mapping here. But sometimes the mapping will get invalid. So always it is not advisable to generate at the runtime. Always it is advisable to create a dummy file there with some header, and then we can do the field mapping and load the data. I'll show that also. Because sometimes without field mapping, the mapping will get invalid. what is happening. So in the meantime, anyone having any questions?
No, Bhaskar.
No, Bhaskar.
Okay, now this is our source where we are reading the data. Mapping is valid. Now let me run it. So before execution, I can show you guys that there is no file here in the target file directory. Now let me see in my jobs. See, 2 records read from source table and 2 records loaded into the target file. See now, EMP target file is generated. It's a text document. When I open it, see name, number, address, values. This is how it is being loaded to the target file because the delimiter I have given as pipe. Okay, so whatever the options that we are going to select, accordingly the data will be, we can read the data and we can load the data. So I will also show one more option. Append if exist. If enable property, so let me re-execute again. When I re-execute again, it will just no. Before that, what I'll do, I'll add one more record into the source file. I'll add one more record. So I've added one more record into the source file. Now let me run it. So because now I did not enable this append if exist property. If you enable append if exist property, then it will append. Otherwise, it will overwrite. Now go to the target files. If you see here, 3 records got loaded because at the runtime it is creating a new file. It is and overwriting it. Okay, so let's say if I enable append if exist property in the target advanced, if I enable this append if exist property, then it will not overwrite. It will every time it will keep adding the data into it. Otherwise, by default it will overwrite the data. See,
Bhaskar, if we have a timestamp, it will override with the timestamp also with existing date and time.
no, if it is a time, see, always we have selected here as file, generate the file at the runtime. That is depends upon the property. Okay, so here what I am doing, I am not using an existing file. Okay, so I am creating at the runtime. So when I'm creating at runtime and I'm giving a static file name here, so it will look for is there any file with the same name or not. If it is same name, then it will directly use it. If it is with the timestamp appended file, okay, so then if it is having only the date value, it will append it. If it is having with minutes and hour seconds, then the new files every time the new file will be generated.
Okay, the latest file will get generated automatically.
So here, so if you wanted to generate the file name like with the date and timestamp, Now we have to use this dynamic file name. Use the dynamic file name with which name, with which column we have to generate here. Either we can use that or in single quotes okay, concatenate with to care of, let's say, sysdate, okay, comma ddmm y concatenate with dot txt. Okay, now what I'm doing, employee target underscore date dot txt. So we are generating with date file. Dynamically we are generating for every execution. Now save it. Mapping is invalid now. Expression is having syntax error. So we have to, I did not validate, so that's why we have to validate the expression. I missed to validate it. There is a syntax error here because instead of comma I have given dot. So we have to validate the expression here. So if we validate, then we will not be having this kind of an issue. Save it. Now the mapping is validated. Now let me execute. With the same date file is there, then it will override. Otherwise, it will create a new file because we are generating dynamically, right, every time. What is said? Employee target to care. File name port is not supported with the connection. Seems like this dynamic one is not supporting here. I'll check later. Okay, but this is the option that to generate the file dynamically. Let me check once again. Okay, so just use dynamic file name and we will have to give the proper expression. So with this expression, the file name will be generated. So every time, so if at all we wanted to generate the file dynamically, so this is the option. So somehow it is not supporting. I'll just check later, but this is the option that you will have to follow. If not, we can give the static file name. Any questions here? Any questions? I'll just check on the dynamic one once. Okay, but with the static file, how do we read the data from a file and how do we load the data into a file? It's not like it is only about just with one mapping, like reading the data from source, loading the data in DF file. It's not like that. See, when you are practicing it, so you can have source is a file, target can be a table, and source will be a table and target will be a file. So you can try with the other options. For example, if you wanted to keep the exact file name, so then what we should do is we have to, instead of creating at the runtime, you can use click on existing, just select it, select the existing file, so that we'll be getting the file options. So here in the formatting options, the field labels import from first row. So we are getting the field labels, target field labels from the first row. So here by default will be coming up. So it's like same source as. So now we will have to change the data types. We'll have to change the respective data types and save it. Then we need to do a field mapping. So we need to do a field mapping. So it is field map, it is automatically selected. So that's why all the fields are automatically connected. Then we can run it. So that append if exists property is already enabled. So it will keep overwriting that existing data. See, second time and third time, 3 times the file is getting appended. Okay, so this is how we are going to read the data from a file and load the data into a file. Understood? Any questions? Anyone having any questions?
No, Bhaskar, it is clear.
So I request others also, please practice and let me know if at all you have any doubts.